minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Dzień dobry, bardzo mi miło Państwa widzieć i mamy dzisiaj specjalnego gościa, bo już dzisiaj jest z nami Marta Bujakowska, już nie po raz pierwszy, więc to osoba, którą Państwo na pewno znacie. Bardzo się cieszę. Zanim przejdziemy do tematu wystąpienia, to powiem może króciutko o tym, że po pierwsze, cała ta seria spotkań organizowana jest przez program English Teaching. Serdecznie zapraszam na warsztaty English Teaching. Można zapoznać się na stronie englishteaching.org.pl. Zdecydowanie polecam, bardzo fajna inicjatywa, można się naprawdę super dużo fajnych rzeczy dowiedzieć. No po drugie, oczywiście jest też współorganizowana przez program English Teaching. No jak wiecie Państwo, English Teaching to innowacyjna platforma przeznaczona do nauczania głównie języków, ale także matematyki, języka polskiego. No i nauczyciele, nauczycielki mogą się za darmo zapisać, za darmo używać, nie ma żadnych tutaj haczyków, tak jak w większości platform tych zachodnich, że się można troszkę porobić darmo, potem trzeba płacić. Platforma jest od początku do końca darmowa dla nauczycieli. No i serdecznie zapraszam Państwa do rejestracji. W najbliższych tygodniach mamy kilka też darmowych szkoleń, jak tego używać. No dobra, ale po tym takim krótkim wstępie reklamowym myślę, że mogę powiedzieć króciutko, o czym będzie mowa dzisiaj. No i dzisiaj jest temat super ciekawy, w dodatku po angielsku, więc w ogóle jakby dwa w jednym. No a właściwie takim trochę dwa w jednym będzie mowa, bo mowa jest o tym, w jaki sposób jednocześnie uczyć i języka, i przedmiotu, tak? Czyli jak użyć sobie, w jaki sposób wprowadzać nauczanie języka jednocześnie z nauczaniem przedmiotowym, co jest super ważne. Mogę powiedzieć z doświadczenia mojego własnego, że to jest niezwykle ważna kompetencja, zarówno na poziomie szkolnictwa wyższego, jak i na poziomie nawet bardzo prostym, przedszkolnym i szkoły podstawowej. I bardzo się cieszę właśnie, że o tym będzie mogła nam powiedzieć Marta Bujakowska, bo ona się zajmuje nauczaniem języka angielskiego już naprawdę od wielu lat, chociaż tego po niej nie widać, to jest osobą niezwykle doświadczoną. No, treningi w Vermont, USA, różnego rodzaju certyfikacje TESOL, uczenie w Canterbury, uczenie się, nie zaprzestała się uczyć po prostu od samego początku i ma dużo do podzielenia. W związku z czym ja się tutaj wycofuję. Welcome Marta, it's a great pleasure.
There's something. Hello, everybody. There was something wrong with your mic, I think. I'm not sure.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but there was some disturbances. I can hear you very well. If you hear me well, there is like echo in what you're saying. Can you hear me well? I cannot hear you.
The floor is yours.
Okay, so if you hear me well, it's fine. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I don't know how many people I have today, but thank you for coming. The topic is very interesting, not too easy. It's not the relaxing time today, but I promise in January I have something really relaxing for you. So we will gather together again after Christmas and we'll have some little fun together, working on our memory, actually. Today, we are going to introduce CLIL. I know, because I followed Facebook or wherever, and I know that some people who wanted to come today, they already do CLIL. They CLILing, right? They introduced CLIL, they enjoy it. They know what to do, how to do it, but I still think that if I share what I know, if I share it with you, we will know more about it. And some people who don't know about CLIL yet, I hope it will encourage them to start using it, because it is round the corner, I always say. In many countries in Europe, it's been introduced and it's been in operation for some years, like in Spain, for example. And I think that one of the reasons why the progress sped up in Spain, I mean, generally the progress of learning English is really still speeding up in Spain, is because of introduction of CLIL. They have so many more hours of English, and they also teach subjects and English at the same time in many places, of course, not all over Spain. The same in the Netherlands. We had, as Darek mentioned, we teach in Canterbury, which is going to be mentioned later on as well. And we have a lot of teachers from the Netherlands who come for specific courses on CLIL. And some are very advanced, some are beginners, but they are all CLILing, right? So this is a little bit of a short introduction before the introduction. As Darek said, I have never stopped learning, and I learned a lot about CLIL from Aleksandra Zaparucha, my dear colleague and friend. And actually, I'm going to mention her more times today. Okay, so first, outline of the presentation. We're going to talk about CLIL as a method, okay? We're going to talk about types of CLIL, not all of them, because it will take a lifetime, I think. We're going to talk about CLIL Real and CLIL for EFL teachers, because I believe you are mainly EFL teachers, right? You're English teachers, not subject teachers, probably. But some of you probably teach some subject and English as well. It depends on the school, it depends on the region. Okay, so CLIL, what does CLIL stand for? Content and language integrated learning, excuse me, and CLIL as a method. Okay, the method to be used in any situation where non-linguistic content is merged with a foreign language in and outside the classroom. And this is crucial, that it is used in and outside the classroom, which means it's very practical, and it prepares students for real life situations where they have to have the language to talk about a subject, about some content they are interested in. And so, generally speaking, I'm going to quote the book by Bo Clegg and Kelly, Putting CLIL into Practice, a very easy to read book, I would say. And it is, I don't know if it's the first, but one of the first books that is addressed to EFL teachers as well. Before, there were a lot of CLIL books, but they were devoted to subject teachers who taught through English. And it's a little bit different, and we have different challenges, obviously. The aim is very important, that the aim is not, or even cannot be, to treat subjects and language equally. They're not equal. Language is the tool, and it should enable students, the method should enable students to use the language effectively to express different subjects like mathematics, history, geography, geometry, whatever is taught in English. There are a number of, but an important thing, it should be single focus. So this is the reason why we want to introduce CLIL. there are a number of CLIL types, and I always say it's like when you say leather shoes, you can enumerate loads and loads of types. So the same here, when you say types of CLIL, we can talk for hours. And there are different researchers who divide them into different categories, groups and types. But first of all, I'm not a researcher. I do base what I teach on research, but I'm a practitioner, so I do practice. And for the sake of this presentation, we are going to talk about two types of CLIL, which are very easily divided into hard CLIL, which what you may think, I don't know, is it is for subject teachers. So it is delivered in a subject class by a subject teacher, and it is subject driven. Of course, it is in English. Okay, so for example, when you were present at my webinar on Finnish model, this works in Finland very well because you have subject teachers, right? They're all in one, because up to grade 6, they teach all the subjects, including English or a foreign language, and in many schools there, they teach in English. So in hard CLIL, teachers are also responsible for the language. Very often I hear when they say, no, I'm not a language teacher. I'm definitely not a language teacher. I teach history, I teach this or that. And I don't agree, unfortunately. I said, okay, but even if you teach high mathematics, you are a language teacher because you teach the language of maths, which is not like an everyday language. It's not an everyday language, right? We don't talk like that. Even, economics or something, we watch the news. We need specific language to understand. So this would be hard CLIL.
But the language is also their responsibility. Now, soft CLIL, on the other hand, is done in a language class and by a language teacher who also, it is also subject driven, and I will explain why and how. And in soft CLIL, teachers are also responsible for the content because the language has to be adjusted to the content. And language is a tool, and in both, right, in both types of CLIL, language is the tool and is the authenticity. So we need to use authentic language. We can't bend and make or introduce simpler language for something like, I don't know, an example that comes to my mind now, there is dormant volcano. We have to use, we cannot say sleeping volcano for the sake of, I don't know what, our students, maybe the language, because it's not an authentic language. Motivation. Okay, I think
that students are much more motivated when they are CLIL'd, okay, when they are taught through English, because the English classes are much more interesting. And what it also does, it improves thinking skills because it requires very specific thinking skills, usually high order thinking skills. There is something like content and language unity. They have to be, as I said, not equal, but adjusted, right? They have to be balanced, and you have to, being a teacher, teachers have to bear it in mind that they are responsible for both language and content. And we will, of course, go into the details. Because there is no content without language, as there is no language without content. When you look at it, you have what? Chemistry, music, geometry, art, biology, history, mathematics or algebra, geography again. They all have very specific language which we need to introduce, even if you do it in Polish. Even subject teachers, if they teach in Polish, they do introduce language. We do run a course for tertiary education, like innovative methodology in tertiary education, where we try to convince academic teachers of different subjects that they are also language teachers. It is not an easy task, I can tell you. It's much easier to talk to primary teachers or secondary teachers. Okay, so CLIL wheel, we're going to go into CLIL wheel, but first we need to talk about 4 C's. Some of you may have heard 4 C's when you read about CLIL or when you deal with CLIL. They are as follows: content, communication, cognition, and culture. And before mentioned Aleksandra Zaparucha, Ola, she is geographer as well as an English teacher, geography teacher, and she started teaching English and geography together, and she remembered how she struggled with the 4th C. Content, okay, it was geography. Communication, what's communication? It's a language, so it was English. Cognition is thinking, so thinking skills, higher skills to be used. But what is culture? What she told me, she struggled so much because culture surrounds it all. It's all embedded in culture, we may say, right? Because when you think the way you, the content is based in culture. Like, for example, we teach about Christmas, we teach about Easter in Poland, and the content is based in culture. We don't teach very much about, I don't know, Ramadan, even though there's no harm, or Hanukkah, but they're just examples. The content is very, very strongly connected to our culture. So is communication, because we communicate in Polish, okay? And it's also based, the language and culture go together, right? We can discuss whether there is a void between language and culture. One of the examples is Esperanto. So we could talk about this language with no culture, or between cultures. The way we think, so cognition, is also very tightly connected with culture, in which we grew up. So what Ola did, and she thought it's best to show it or present it in a circle, which is culture surrounds the 3 other C's. And the four C's were proposed in the before mentioned book, Putting CLIL into Practice, together with 10 parameters. I mean, it was the 4 C's and 10 parameters of CLIL. And what Ola did, she put them together and created CLIL wheel. And they should not be viewed, nothing here should be viewed in opposition to one another. They all connected and they can be merged together in CLIL wheel, which looks like that. If you can have a second, okay, I give you 30 minutes to look and read. I will go over them one by one. Okay, so we will start from content first. So it's a orange part. Okay, what's first in content? First in content is sequence. Okay, And what it means, it's this is the challenge for language teachers. It's not a challenge for subject teachers at all, because usually they teach in sequence, right? You cannot teach some things before you taught something else, right? So, for example, when you teach ancient Egypt, right? Something about ancient Egypt, you show them what the pyramid looks like, right? And then you introduce the word, the language as well, and then you go on and use and talk about the dynasties or whatever is on your agenda. The same with other topics like geography. Before students are asked to use maps, they have to know what a map is and how to use it and what it is for. So the challenge for language teachers, I mean, we also have sequences. You usually teach the simple past tense before past continuous. Am I right? I mean, you don't have to, but this would be a regular sequence in grammar. So what I'm saying here, and I'd advise strongly, we should teach at least 3 lessons in a sequence. We can't have like a clear lesson on something and then never mention it again. It doesn't have to be like in order and 1, 2, 3 in the given week. You can have 1 class of CLIL every week, and they should be connected. And for the remaining time, when you have 3 or more classes of English in a given week, you can do some other things. Okay, next parameter, the second parameter, is concept language. So concept language, as you see here, if you see it, if it's big enough for you, is bigger. Concept is bigger than language, which means that what you teach dictates the language you use or to be used. This means that we should never compromise the content for the sake of language. And this is a bit hard for us English teachers because we always want our English perfect and correct. So, for example, we only know that if you teach history, it needs to be based on past tenses, whether the students have had it or not. I mean, if they had it introduced before or not. You just present it very quickly, and it of course you assess the language as well, but content is much more important then. So even you don't have time to do like formal introduction of the structure, but it goes without saying that in history we use simple past or past tenses, whilst, for example, in science we would use the passive voice. Next is task language, and look here, task again here, task is bigger, right? It's a symbolic, bigger than language, which means that we want the students, what we want the students to perform is dictated by the language we use. Okay, so we have to, the task is dictated by the language. So you have the task and the language has to be adjusted to the task. So there is no, I would say, you cannot compromise to anything here. Next point, next parameter is guided multimedia input, which should not surprise anyone, I think, in the 21st century, and moreover, in the middle of the pandemic, right? We do it all the time. We use the media. But what does it mean? What does guided mean here? I think I also mentioned it when we were talking about flipped classroom, that it has to be very well planned, very well staged, and guided throughout in order not to add to the students' confusion and creating havoc. they're overwhelmed already. And what it means in practice, that the clips you use, or films, or clips, or audio, it could be podcasts, they should be short. They say, I read it in some American articles, that they should be as long as the class. So it's like first class 1 minute, second grade, 2 minutes, etc. So it means that in our final grade of high school, it could be 12 minutes long. Of course, we're not pharmacists, so we don't need to measure everything like that precisely. But there is something in it that what we have to do, we have to cut them into chunks, and it's guided. So it's not like watching a film. Let's watch a video because we have free time. It's very closely guided by the teacher, and the students know exactly why they watch each piece and what they need to learn from each piece shown. 3 dimensions. So slowly we're moving from content into communication. 3 dimensions are content, everybody knows what it is the subject. Language, everybody knows. In our case, it's the English language. But what's procedure? And it's very, very important. It's like we also have our own procedures. We would call them routines in our classroom. But there are many more because each subject has a different procedure. So the teacher, for example, might ask students to use a text to construct a mind map or a Venn diagram or some other graphic expression of the outcome of some activity or task or even text. And even if it's new, it's a new thing. If it is a new thing for the students, like the procedure itself, it needs to get a lot of attention. So we need to introduce mind maps. We need to show them what they're for. It's not just a colored picture. It might be, it should be, but we have to teach them exactly how to do it, how to draw a mind map in order to be a learning tool for them. For example, okay, and on the other hand, if the lesson is exceptionally heavy in terms of new vocabulary, the teacher needs to give an extra help and extra language support. For instance, while talking about cells or structure of an animal cell, we need to include all new vocabulary to name the cell organelle, no matter how tough it seems, but this is what it is called, as I mentioned before. We can't find easier names for different things, different objects, different names. And if the content itself is extra challenging for students, the teachers should opt for a simpler procedure. So you don't introduce a new procedure, you follow some procedure you're sure your students know. So to sum this up, every CLIL lesson requires specific tuning in. So this seems hard into those 3 dimensions. This seems really hard and complicated at the beginning, but once you start doing it, it becomes a routine. And you know that if you have like heavy content, your procedure has to be well known to your students, so they focus on the content or the language. It depends. So by looking into this parameter, right, and it's something like between content and communication, we are swiftly moving from C for content into C for communication, which is language, as I said before. So these parameters cause greater challenge for subject teachers now, but are not surprising for us, for language teachers, on the other hand, because we do follow them. Okay, key language. It's language that needs extra attention in a CLIL lesson. It is not limited, however, to technical or academic terms like omnivore or static electricity. It also includes quite general but academic terms like observe or hypothesize. Of course, in kindergarten or in primary school, you can say what you think will happen. Of course, you will not introduce this kind of language, but further on in education, it should be definitely introduced. As well as I said, grammar structures, simple past history, and some other structures that we would need in different subjects. Instructions, we all know, right? We all know how important it is to give instructions. Of course, if we decide to teach entirely in English. Some teachers prefer to give instructions in Polish, depending on the level as well, because it's time saver. I'm more for giving instructions in English, but be extra careful. What we need to think about here, we don't want to pose an extra burden on the students. So we need to stage them. So you don't give them the complicated instruction all at one go. You stage them, you keep them short and clear, and you also add a written form. This is on the screen or on the board, depending on the conditions. I remember that I had problems with instructions in my very initial methodology course, and I gave them okay, kind of okay, but I never checked them. I forgot. I was like notorious, right? I never remembered to check instructions. So what I did, I drew, or I wrote on a piece of cardboard, check instructions, and I stuck it on the opposite wall. So I could see this all the time, and my students didn't see it. And then only then did I remember to check instructions. As we know, asking your students, do you understand, is not good enough, because very often they say, oh yeah, and they're telling you the truth. They understand, they seem to understand now at the moment of speaking, but in 5 minutes they find out that they didn't understand the instruction. So I also put them on screen. Those of you who attended my workshops maybe remember that I usually give instruction orally, and I also have it on the screen, and I try to keep them there for some time so you can always refer to them if you forget what you need to do, without disturbing other students asking questions. Okay, next one is interaction. And it says here, student to student. I personally cannot imagine, I cannot imagine no interaction in a language classroom. I mean, student-student interaction. I cannot imagine how you can teach a language without your students speaking to each other. And here it's even more, because they need to learn together. They need to discuss things together. They even need to discuss difficult language items, completely new, the use of them, etc. I don't have enough time to talk about teaching vocabulary, especially in CLIL, but I will include it in my workshop. Like there are Marzano's 6 steps of teaching vocabulary, which are they come really useful while introducing CLIL methodology. So student-student interaction is absolutely crucial. And we need to support it. We need to encourage it. They really, trust me, they learn, very often they learn more from each other than they learn from us nowadays. I'm sure. I think in the previous times when teacher was a lecturer, maybe they did learn a lot from a lecturing teacher. But nowadays, with so much information from everywhere, they're sponges and they absorb the knowledge from all the sources and they want to interact, they want to check it. And you are there to monitor it. If the knowledge they gain is really the one you want them to have, if it is really useful for them. The next parameter in communication is supported output. There was a lot about input, and now we have output. Students' output. Producing language, both oral and written, requires a CLIL teacher to give a lot of support. For instance, through sentence starters, or substitution tables, or different graphic organizers. There is a lot, and we're going to cover them in workshops, because each subject would require different, as I said before, procedure, and also graphic organizers. So there is, it's really like well organized. So I think it's, I wouldn't say it's not creative. I think it still can be very creative, but it's kind of well-organized creativity. You can be creative in what you write in different tables, but you have to follow the requirements of different graphic organizers. For example, the last parameter satisfies the 4 C's, and its cognition, which I mentioned before, is thinking. It translates into thinking, and this parameter requires students' total engagement, so both physical and mental. And we're talking about higher order thinking, which is very demanding, of course, but with all the steps taken before, it can be easily done. And once you introduce it, like let's say that you introduce some science, right? And they hypothesize, they do experiment, they have some outcome, which doesn't come out as the hypothesis told them. And it's even better. I always say, well, if the experiment doesn't come out as you expect, it's even better, because this is experiment. They don't always come out as you expect. So the results sometimes are, well, sad because it's not what you imagined, but it's even better. But the involvement is really, really strong then, and the thinking as well. And they get used to it so much that they can't wait for another lesson using CLIL. Okay, now as you see, all three C's, cognition, content, and communication, are immersed in culture, and it's presented in a wheel in a graphic way. So this is all together. We have 4 parameters, 3 C's plus 1 remaining C together. And so far we've dealt with what, why, and how of CLIL. And now it's time we look at the next point of my presentation, that is what to teach and how to do it in practice a little bit. Of course, I said it will be a little bit practical as well. So CLIL for EFL teachers, because I think this is what we are mostly interested in. And there are various terms to introduce and to use to describe this situation. CLIL for EFL teachers, which is soft CLIL, of course, and it's content enhanced language teacher, right? So language teacher, you're still staying language teacher, but you need the content. And I'm going to give you 6 content options for language teachers specifically, okay? So first, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Extend your course book. We all use our course books and they're fine. And sometimes I always say to teachers, look between the lines, read between the lines, look at the resources for teachers at the back of your teacher's book. Examine the book, because there is usually a big source of knowledge, and if we only look at students' book, it still can be extended, but then we have to extend it. And sometimes in your course books, you already have everything you need. How can we extend our course book? So now, there is, for example, right, we have food almost in every course book, right? We have clothes in many course books. We have waste in more and more course books nowadays. So what can we do here? What can we do with it? How can we combine it? Food, clothes, and waste. It's like another option for us, right? We can extend our course books that is, it includes these things into global issues like education for sustainable development, which actually is our duty, I think, to include, because it's never enough of it nowadays. And let me share with you some websites where you can find great resources for you, in some of them even ready-made lesson plans, which would be CLIL. It's a great little topic, okay? And you can explore it and develop it in your own way. And yeah, it's endless, and they are endless resources. So I'm talking, but I'm waiting for you maybe to write down the websites. So we are already using our course books to include global issues. And next point in it is engage in fun science. Oh, they love it, I can tell you. I experimented on my grandson first before we did it in class and before we did it in teacher training session. You could see teachers, grown-up people making a lava lamp. Of course, it's a lot of fun, but we follow a certain procedure as well, and it's science, so they need to use scientific language. So we need to learn it too, which is even better for our own learning. And then the students can produce worksheets or observation sheets or reports like this one, our experiment. So all of them had like a blank table with 6 boxes: ingredients, observation, or our hypothesis, then observation, then second hypothesis, another observation, and conclusions. In some points, in some cases, it was a beautiful lava lamp. Sometimes it was like a gray pulp, and it didn't produce any gas, so there was nothing about density of liquid. But of course, because you do it in a classroom, so those whose experiment didn't come out really well, they can observe some others. And then you can also do some fun vocabulary games, which Marzano encourages us to do, but we are going to talk about it at some other time. Okay, there's yet another experiment on gases or sink or float, very simple activity to do in your classroom. Then, third point is explore your area. I'm a great advocate, I'm a big advocate for exploring your own area, your local area. And I think we don't do it enough. How can we do it? Okay, the example is Kent, Canterbury, Kent. I told you I would mention it again. This is where we do a lot of, not only there, but there are a lot of teacher training for pilgrims, teaching center. And that's why we did explore the local area there. If you live in a small town and you have like a local museum or a river or whatever, forest, please do explore it and think wide, think really wide. So County Kent, right? This is where Canterbury is. What can we do? We think literature. We have Geoffrey Chaucer. We have Canterbury Tales. We have geography, endless. I have to hurry up because the time is running. Okay, geography, cartography, geology, and then you have enumerated little topics. History, of course, endless. Middle Ages, Archbishop Thomas Becket, they learn, even in Polish, they learn it in history. We will talk about cross-curriculum activities in a minute, or architecture. And then what happens, they all interconnected, right? You can say historical maps, right? So history would be connected to geography, but also architecture. Let's say geography would be connected to architecture too. So we can find, we should try to find a lot of connections. This is what I mentioned as well about this wonderful Finnish model, that when you are a teacher of everything for 6 years, you naturally interconnect. But in Poland, because we have subject teachers from class 4, grade 4 onwards, there's no so many connections naturally, but we can cooperate with other teachers. So we can use, coming back to our course books, we can use CLIL pages, which look like that, but please do use the sequence. So if you have a CLIL page like that in your book and you have circulatory system, think of what are the other systems our body have. So our bodies have. So we can go on and we can talk about breathing system or some other systems in our body and build up a sequence of classes on body for science or biology. And next point is exploring CLIL readers. We have a lot of them now. All publishers, I think, introduce them. And look at them here. We have one reader. It's about Egypt, right? Or ancient history, and the example was Egypt. So what we have here? We have geography. We have astronomy. We have Gotra. We have maths. We have geology and art. We have biology. We have geometry and physics, and geography again. So always think that way. Think wide. It's not only English what you teach, because you always teach a lot of other things. And last but not least, cross-curricular projects. Why don't you try to talk to other subject teachers, especially when you, and I understand that especially NIDA teachers, you teach in smaller school usually, so the community maybe it's a little closer. And why not talk to other teachers and talk to a history teacher and have a look what they actually doing and try to do the same, more or less in the same era or touch the same topics, or geography teacher, if they do something like water, for example. It's endless. It's a beautiful topic. I love doing it. So what we have for water, we have geography, we have chemistry, of course, then biology. What else? Sport, of course, we have a lot of water sports, and then we can talk about rules in different sports, etc., etc. Physics, obviously. We have art, watercolors, and literature, waterfalls, oceans, Joseph Conrad, whatever, it depends on what level you teach. And now let me share at the end, towards the end, we're getting towards the end. Yeah, 5 golden rules of content-enhanced language teaching. So this is what we are doing, right? Language teachers. And let's see what they are. Number 1, plan a series of series of lessons again. So always think, if you have one wonderful CLIL lesson, CLIL page in your course book, think, okay, that's great, I'm going to do it. But then think, how are you going either to divide it into the series of lessons or find more material for a follow-up. Next, number 2, is talk to a subject teacher or teachers, different subjects. You can have projects together, like this water project, for example, or you can just follow and do some similar things at the same time, similar time. Number 3, it's content before language. I'm sorry, but it's true, even though we don't like it, because we want to teach language. But language expresses something, and we want our students to be able to express any subject in English. And of course, I'm an English teacher, but can I express any subject in English? No. Tell me or ask me about economy. I'm not very good at it. I mean, I can talk, do more than small talk, perhaps, but I can talk about economy a little bit. But if you go deeper, I would be lost for words in both Polish and English. And we want our students to be cleverer than us, more clever, and we want them to be able to use English while talking about different subjects. Number 4, content needs to be assessed, and it needs to be assessed by you, an English teacher, because let me give you an example. For example, a student writes a sentence: the Baltic Sea is in the south of Poland. Perfect, grammatically, language-wise, wonderful. But I'm sorry, no, because north and south are not the same. So you have to correct it, right? You have to correct it and assess it, or assess it, and they can correct it. And please challenge yourself and your students at the same way, because if you start looking for new materials, and you feel challenged, and then you will challenge them. And I think nothing motivates more than a little challenge. Of course, not crushing them, but challenge them a little bit. Show them that they can take one more step, that they can strain a little bit more to achieve more. And they would be nothing but grateful for you. Okay, here we're coming to the end. Here is a list of resources. I leave it for a sec or two, but you can always get back to me. So this is what I use, what references I used. And there is Alexandra Zaparucha, whom I mentioned and I'm going to mention again. And this is Facebook group you may join if you have interest, and it's all called CLIL Matters, and it's run by Alexandra Zaparucha. Or for primary, right? The first one was for primary teacher, And the next one is for secondary teachers. I know that many of you are both. Sometimes you can join both groups. And also you can join, you can subscribe to YouTube channel on CLIL. Again, CLIL Matters. Or follow it on Instagram. And if you want more information, there is an email address. You can write to Ola Zaparucha or me on this address. And it was designed, the whole presentation was designed and illustrated. I mean, not the content, but the look, right? By Marta Zaparucha, who is Ola's daughter. And she's a designer, professional designer now. So we asked her for help and she willingly did it. So, thank you very much and happy CLILing, and I hope to see you again, maybe in February when we have some workshops, or in January for Brain Gym. If you have some questions, please write them in chat, and Darek will probably look at them and pass them on to me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. It's been very informative. I've enjoyed a lot. I think it is a very interesting topic. Honestly, I think we should have more teachers doing it this way because it's amazing. You can have the best of both worlds, basically. So I'm all for it. Thank you so much for your time. I hope we'll see each other again, maybe next semester. We'll see how it works. And to everybody, I mean, thank you so much. As a reminder, we're going to have another webinar this Friday at 6, a webinar about the proper pronunciation for Polish speakers, which I know is usually a huge bummer. You know, we all struggle with teaching people how to pronounce properly with our own pronunciation. So I think it is very interesting. Totally welcome you to come and hear. And for now, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. Dziękuję wszystkim serdecznie i do usłyszenia.
Dziękuję.